love that Billy spread around, and we're just a tiny, tiny drop of what he spread all over this town, and from what I've seen and messages that I've gotten, it's global. Billy touched so many people that it's amazing. As you probably all know, Billy was a spontaneous person. And so tonight is about spontaneity. And I would like it if any of you wanted to share how you met Billy or how Billy touched you. That would really be wonderful. So I'm going to step back, and anybody that comes here, I lit this up, I brought this for Billy. And anybody that would like to say something about Billy, I would it would be great. And I know a lot of you are not able to talk. A lot of us are going through a confused and painful time. Anyone that would like to, that'd be fine. And if we choose not to talk, that's fine. We can always play the rent some more. About Billy. Anybody?
I'll say something. I just want to say that I don't necessarily know Billy. I met him once, but he was very kind to me. But what I do know of him is of his writing, because I'm a writer as well. And I remember as a young gay man coming to Disney World for the first time, every week my job allowed me, I had a job where I could read the Orlando Weekly every week. It was delivered to us. And I remember reading his column every week, and as a writer I connected to that. And I remember feeling like that he had such a unique voice. And I was so impressed with his observations, which were very astute. They were always kind. They were, he spilled the tea, but not in such a way that, was ever hurtful. It was always funny and ironic. And it really, I think that when people look at our community and they have read his column, it's been around for so long now, all of his writing, so many people know him through his writing. I'm very jealous of those of you who knew him personally, because I know that the writing is just the surface and not all the memories that you guys have. But I just want to say, for all the people that only know him through his writing, we will miss his writing, because it was in depth, it was beautiful, it was revelatory. And I think that, if anyone, I know that when Billy, the first face I saw when the Pulse massacre happened was his face on all the news channels representing all of us. And I remember thinking how perfect a choice that was, because anybody could have represented Orlando, and yet they chose the person who was Orlando. And I think that, because he knew everybody, and he was a lively, I could just tell from, all the crazy photos he did and all the events that he went to. I was just amazed at all the lives that he touched. So I think he represented us well, and I think he got us through that crisis. I think his kindness and his determination to write and to be there for this community is why he ended up touching so many people in the end. So I think, I just wanted to say, as a fellow writer, that well done, Billy. You did a fantastic job as a writer. Yeah.
Sure, thank you.
So I knew Billy through social justice work, and I've never known anybody who could tell a story of social justice the way that he could. And I think the reason why he was able to do that is because he was like a shaman. He took the pain of everything he wrote about inside. He was like a method actor for writing. And I knew him as a writer before I knew him as a person. And getting to know him as a person, he was so much more impressive. I feel like Orlando experienced so many important things through Billy, from the forensic time through gay marriage. I went to his wedding and I felt like that was real for the first fucking time, being there with him. And then Pulse. And I feel like for a shaman to take on the pain of the city, along with all of the celebration and all of the work that we've done, has been more than we could ask of one person. And I just feel blessed to have known him. And I'm so glad that we all came together to share that.
So I interned with Billy at Watermark last summer, and last summer was, shall we say, a turbulent time to intern at Watermark. When you're a journalist covering tragedy, you don't really get to have like a proper grieving process. You know, it just happens, and then instantly you have to be there to sort of relay that information out to everyone else who needs to know what's going on. So just the strength and the compassion and the bravery and the pride that Billy and everyone else at Watermark showed that summer when Pulse happened. But the way that we were able to soldier through that and still do our job and still try to represent the community as best we could. I'll never forget the strength that he showed and that everyone else showed.
So I met Billy a long time ago, and I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was kind of this crazy, fun guy that I ran into here and there. And this is before I came out, and so I was kind of living a different life. And then a long time went where I didn't see him. I knew who he was because now I was reading him in the Orlando Weekly, and then I got onto the board for Come Out with Pride, and the first event, a launch party that I ran an auction at, Billy was there, and he ran up to me, and I didn't know that he knew who the hell I was from however many years ago, but he ran up to me and he gave me this big hug, and he was like, look at you, you're one of us now, you drank the Kool-Aid, huh? And then a couple years later, when Pride was going through its troubles, Billy was actually really supportive. There were a lot of people kind of chomping at the bit in a not so supportive way for that organization, and he was incredibly supportive. And I just was always very touched by how much he remembered from before, and just how supportive he always had been, both personally and to us as a board and to Pride as an organization. So
I actually got to know Billy through Cha most recently. Him and I presented in the same group along with Hannah. And the tragedy for me is that it was the first time that I had met him, and it was so shortly later that this happened. My first rehearsal, I walked in and he was sitting in a chair, and I went and I sat down next to him because he felt safe. He felt loving and he felt open, and I was nervous as all get out, and I needed something to feel good about being there. And as I watched him transition through his rehearsals and get to the final show, the strength that he exhibited and the way that he told his story and the courage that he had behind his story and the love that he still shared despite everything that had happened in his life, for me was just mind-blowing. I truly didn't know how he continued to push on and still love and still love and still love and still love. And for me, that was what melted my heart with him. And I had a lot of respect for him. And getting to know him and Anthony was a really cool thing for me, and I always enjoyed all of their adventures on Facebook, and most recently found out that Anthony is the deli manager at the deli close to my house, and so I was like, well, keep me up to date on all of your adventures, and he's like, I will. So I think it's up to us to keep those adventures going for his spirit, for Anthony, for his family and friends and everyone.
Hello, everybody. I'll try to talk to where you can hear me. I just remembered a funny story. He was a spontaneous kind of person, and I ran into him several years ago on Iro, just looking to see what I could find and do what we always do. And I ran into him, and without saying a word, he takes my sunglasses off, takes his off, put his on my face, and mine on his face. And I didn't say anything because it was just so natural. I kind of didn't really remember, so he helped me pick some things out and gave me some opinions and all of that kind of thing. And when we were done, I go, well, I got to go home and feed the beast and my husband. So he was going to go and do another switcheroo, and I'm like, no, I tell you what, I got a million of them, and I got an entire sunglasses wardrobe. He's like, really? I go ahead. So he went off with my sunglasses like it was just, doesn't everyone do this? And that was one of the best lost days of my life, because I just went down there for something to do, you know. But that's the kind of guy Billy was, you know, and he had a great love for what he did and people, all of us. He really did. He owned us, the city and all the people, in a good way. And I'm gonna miss that. Here to you, buddy. Here to you.
I'm Jim Leatherman, and I used to work at the coolest record store in Orlando called Murmur Records back in the 80s and 90s, and Billy was probably still in high school at that point, maybe just out of high school, and he used to come in and buy any cool Euro pop band that he could think of, and he was a complete Duran Duran fanatic and professed his love for Nick Rhodes to me often. And I would save him any cool Duran Duran thing that came in, pretty much, and hold it aside just for him. And I later went off to work at Park Ave CDs, and he continued to shop there as well. And he got a job at Barnes & Noble, so I would, any chance I could, would go see him and buy magazines. And he and I would talk music almost constantly. That was our real connection. We had a big that was great.
Well, music brought me and Billy together too. My name is Sandra Carr, and yes, I can admit it, I am a Duran Duran fan. Huge Duran Duran fan. We knew each other, but we got to really know each other because of music. Remember, we both attended a Duran Duran meetup in Thornton Park, and we, just talked all things Duran Duran. And then, not too long after that, he contacted me and said, you're on Rockstar Wives on E. I said, yeah, right. And he said, no, I'm serious. You need to watch it. It's going to re-air this Friday night. And I said, all right, Billy, I'm going to watch it. And lo and behold, it really was me and my friends at a Duran Duran concert. No way. They used the footage. The documentary, it was filmed for a documentary. The documentary didn't happen. So we think the videographer decided to put that B-roll into the documentary. So I contacted E. They weren't helpful, and so I said I had an entertainment attorney, and all of a sudden they're very helpful. So Billy and I laughed about that for a very long time. And they did finally edit us out and put someone else in, I guess. But anyway, but we were both journalists. I worked at the Sentinel and he worked at the Weekly, and we would work in the field together, and it was, you know, always a blessing to see his friendly face and just seeing him at concerts, because we attended the same shows. It wasn't Duran Duran, it was Culture Club or whatever, and he was always so excited at shows. He, you know, it was just nice to see that admiration and love of music, and I'm gonna miss him very much.
He was a huge supporter of local music.
Yes,
too.
that too, yes.
I played in a couple of local bands back in those days too. And he was always there, and he was always so jubilant and so much fun, and such a cheerleader. He loved people making art and doing great things. He was one of a kind.
I'm just gonna say. My name is Mitch. I moved here in 2009, working in politics, and so like a lot of people, I knew of Billy before I met him by reading him, and it was at the healthcare and Tea Party and all that stuff. And the first time I met Billy, I'm meeting him as a journalist, thinking like, I'd read him and he has his own eccentric voice, but when I'm meeting him, I'm trying to watch what I'm saying and being correct. And the first thing he talks about, I just remember him referring to like, well, yeah, the fucking fascists are coming, and like, I'm like, oh, me and you are gonna get along real well. And yeah, I know that there's a lot of good stories about Pulse and his wedding and so many things where it's really emotional, tragic. But I'm trying to think back on the times I was fortunate enough to get to spend with him on a personal level, and being like at his house and just watching, Pee Wee Herman's Christmas, just casually watching that, and his presence as someone who, when things were good or things were bad, just having someone to talk to that would be very open and honest and put things in a way that I don't have the words for. I'm really gonna miss that voice.
So my connection to Billy is really from Planned Parenthood. That's where I work. And Billy, as a journalist, was always so good about identifying the intersectionality of our issues. And so, as the LGBTQ advocate, he would always try to draw the connection between the issues that his community faced, the issues of women's rights, reproductive rights, and reproductive justice. And he was covering Planned Parenthood before anyone else was. I mean, reporters wouldn't even give us like a second unless there was a bomb outside or something. But Billy would publish proactive stories highlighting our work and the connection between our communities to just as soon as even last week, covering our issues and always asking, so what's the impact of the LGBT community? And I would be able to provide the opportunity to speak to that, to really showcase how our struggles are tied together. But I think the moment where I've always had respect for Billy, but when it really was elevated was during the fight for Medicaid expansion in Florida. And I'm sure y'all remember the story of Charlene Dill. And Billy was the only writer that really brought that story up to light, and it just shaped the entire narrative in Florida of why we were fighting to expand Medicaid, because people were dying. 1 in 5 Floridians were dying. And that story just changed everything and gave exposure to the fight that we were pushing for. And though we didn't get Medicaid expansion in Florida, at the very least we could hold people accountable and say they were killing people because Billy let us do that. So he had so much power and self-efficacy despite the fact that he carried trauma on his shoulders each and every day. And I think there's anything that, for me, that I've learned from Billy, it's the power of vulnerability and just being as authentic as possible in all spaces, because it inspires others to do the same.
Like a lot of people, Billy and I had an individual greeting that we would greet one another with every time we saw each other, and I don't know how it began or when it began, but if Billy would see me coming across the street, he would say, "It's Bob fucking Poe." and my greeting was always, if I would see him first, it would be, "It's Billy fucking Maine." And so that's for years how we would always greet one another. And you know, Billy had such a tremendous spirit. You know, he was always filled with joy, but you always knew that underneath that there was also a lot of pain, and that he carried that with us and for us. You know, he was an empath.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
You know, he saw things and he took it on himself. And we're all grieving. We have a lot to grieve about. This was so shocking, so sudden, and so quick. And a lot of us still having time to process it all. But you know, while we're doing that, I really would like us to also take some time to think about Tony.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And what Tony is going through, it's absolutely unimaginable. And Tony deserves our thoughts, our prayers, and our strength. And so whatever you can do to facilitate that, please do.
You all knew Billy much better than I did. I worked for him, wrote for him for about a year. I was really close to him for about a month. Like, I attended the march in Washington, the March and Parade in Washington in November. Just had lunch with him a couple weeks ago. I spoke with him on Sunday. You all can much better say something about him. I want to say something for him. Billy gave and gave and gave until he didn't have anything left to give, until he was all dried up.
He had a huge weight on his shoulders.
And he carried it.
I know
but
he did.
carried it.
Yes, he did. Absolutely.
I would hope that all of you listening and all of you tonight who are thinking about him specifically will take this energy, your mourning, as a call to action as well. He has fought this fight for so long for all of us, just by himself. Well, not by himself, but leading it, the charge by himself. He gave us all the tools we need to march forward and carry on his work. Please don't let that be in vain. Please,
There's
all
no
of
worries
you.
there.
That's
not a worry.
He's laid the groundwork.
We will keep it alive.
I mean, how can we not? Billy is Orlando.
Yep.
He's Orlando.
We will keep it.
I love you guys.
We'll keep his voice alive.
So, on that note, I mean, I don't want to keep vying for this position, but I absolutely did not know Billy as a person. I moved to Orlando when I was very young and started reading Billy's column, and then started reading the Orlando Weekly because of that. And because of that, I was given a sort of window into a part of myself and a part of my family and just a part of my identity that I would not have had access to otherwise. And as I grew up and had to really understand who I was and therefore understand how I related to other people and started to become active in the community in my own way and in social justice, it put a new perspective on the work that Billy and everyone who worked with him has done for Orlando and what that does for people, for real people who are here. The burden that we face, that we shouldn't have to face, all the many fights that we take on that we shouldn't have to fight, but we do keep fighting. Billy was obviously a very raw and exuberant person, and I absolutely believe that the reason that he was so exuberant was because he really saw the pain that he and himself was going through from a very pure perspective. It wasn't so much that it was about the misery of it all, but that he could see the gold, he could see the other side. He saw what he was working for. I have a theory about people and living and dying, that people are a lot like stars, and that as we move through our life, we gain mass, we gain memories, we gain a personality, we have likes and dislikes and fights and loves. And then when we die, that is when, despite how big or small our life may have been while it was lived, that is when people reflect. And they see and they seek out how they relate to that. So on the heels of what was just said, I know that it feels like there is a vacuum left, but a vacuum is always filled. Billy absolutely did so much work for this community and for the community as a whole, that the other thing I really want to say is people like Billy, as I have seen it, burn out young because they live so fully and so passionately. And I think that there's something beautiful in that, but I don't think that is how it has to be. I think people like that live as passionately as they do, and they fight as hard as they fight because they see that so few other people are going to do it. So he couldn't have been the only person. He wasn't the only person, but there has to be other people. If we all took on the fight a little bit, maybe we wouldn't have these few people who take on the fight so passionately that it consumes them. We could burn longer, farther, and brighter if everyone just took a risk. It was that vulnerability. It is very scary to me to stand in the victimization of my identity. I have no choice, but I really don't like it. And I don't think any of us do. We just want to be who we are, but we know that being who we are is a fight. And we do deserve sometimes not to fight, just to enjoy our lives, but sometimes we do have to stand together for everyone, so we don't just have these bright, hot, flashy stars, because that's wonderful, but it's lonely.
So, I'm Steve. Hi, everybody. Really not sure what to say. Just, I love Billy. Didn't know him as well as I would have liked. Hadn't known him as long as I would have liked. But when you met Billy and you were around him, you just felt him. A lot of people have said, he was like an empath. I always felt like he was just a sponge, right? And whenever there was pain around him, that he just absorbed it, and if I was hurting and he was nearby, I could just feel the pain kind of lifting out of me, and it felt like he just absorbed it and then reflected it back as like this happy light, and you almost couldn't be sad around him. So what the young lady said before about his activism, he probably had more activism in his brief life than the rest of us put together. And I think what you said is so right on about the burning bright and fast and all of that. And I think that, the best way for us to honor him is for us to just go out and pick up the torch and just continue and work even harder and show our respect that way. We're going to miss him. And I'm glad that he's not in pain right now. But we love you, Billy. We'll see you on the other side.
Hey everyone. I wasn't particularly friends with Billy Maines, but ever since I moved to Orlando in the early 2000s and was a local musician, he was always a fixture about talent for us. And I could never go to, say, a like-minded event and not see him there. Either a protest or an 80s concert or something, And he was older than me, but like, we were Facebook friends, we talked on Facebook, but everything he posted music-wise was stuff I liked, with Duran Duran and Yazoo and, Culture Club, and I was like, oh, this guy's awesome, And I remember I used to read, at work, we used to live blog the county commission meetings. I was sit there just dying, and the picture was there, but there was this, just a chuckle on my desk, and it was just, I mean, he was a great guy, and I think a good testament to anyone's life is when we do pass this world that this many people will show up a whim, and everyone has a story about him, you know, and that's all you hope to accomplish in life, you know. I put a little antidote on my Facebook, and I think very much of it. The last summer, my wife and I ran into Billy at the Cyndi Lauper concert. Go figure, we'll see him in Cyndi Lauper. You know, we were talking to him at the bar, and in the middle of the show, she's playing like, you know, her greatest hits and some show tune she's doing on the tour. Then she started playing a song, and I was looking at her like, what the hell song is this? You know, like, I didn't know what it was. And everyone's just sitting down, but lo and behold, Billy gets up and starts dancing around. And I'm like, and I'm looking at him like, oh, and I'm turning my phone like, I gotta remember this song, you know? And I found it, and just not, no BS, for the past year, it's like on my list of daily songs at the gym or listen to every day. You know, but the more I think of that moment, it made me realize being a shy person and not really want to get up and dance or talk to crowds of people on a whim, it put in perspective that, you know, sometimes when everyone's sitting down, wondering what the heck's going on, sometimes it's good to get up and be bold and dance, or in Billy's case, talk or be proactive, you know. And a lot of times, stuff he said on Facebook, it was borderline vulgar for some people, you know, brash, yeah. But you know what? It was always the truth. He was saying stuff that I was like, yeah, I want to say that too, but I can't. I think you're doing it. And like everyone said, like, you know, he did lay the groundwork, and we learned something that maybe we should all stand up as he did and be brash and just say what you gotta say, because you only got one time around, and make it count, you know. And just that's all it is, and you know, it's for you, man. You know.
My name is Carlos, and the first time I met Billy was at a press conference where he was asking my boss questions. And because I was new as a retread, a relocation back to Orlando, I actually didn't know who Billy was when I first met him. But when I did meet him, I was like, okay. Alright, you know, this is really cool. And as far as the live blogging goes, I do have to say, confession, I used to look forward to going home at night, opening a bottle of wine, and starting to drink as I read through the live blog, and just LOL through the entire thing, because it was amazing. A lot of people remember Billy because of the fact that he was a reporter reporting on the LGBTQ community and the movement. But the reality is that Billy didn't just transcribe the movement. He wasn't transcribing history. That wasn't the only thing he was doing. Billy was the movement. His story was history. And so many of the personal trials and tribulations that he has had, that he has carried with him for so long, he felt an obligation to speak out and tell his story. To, after the death of his former partner Alan, come to Tallahassee and speak in Senate committees to talk about how we needed to have a statewide domestic partnership registry because of his personal experiences and how not having access to full benefits of marriage equality was something that really was destroying his life. And so when we remember Billy, we have to remember that he really was a part of this movement. He was the movement. He transcribed the movement. And he, even though it's really, really hard for all of us to say goodbye, because a lot of us didn't get to say goodbye. And that's what makes it so hard. is a lot of us didn't get to have that last conversation with Billy. We didn't get to have one more phone call or one more off-the-wall lunch meeting with him, which are the best. And I know for sure, because he did this every time, and I've never had a member of the press do this, that at the end of any interview, if it was on the phone, we end that phone call by saying, "I love you." And I would just instinctively say, "I love you back," because it was true. But it's not goodbye. It's see you later. And I think what Billy wants us all to do, because this is exactly how he lived his life, is he wants all of us to resist by living our lives authentically and without apology. So, cheers to Billy.
I'm ready. Hi guys, I'm Ducky. I met Billy like 25 plus years ago at, you remember Big Bang?
Yes. Yes.
Dancing and talking about music, as Jim has said. And we stayed in each other's lives in these weird periods. Like there was the 1991 protest against the Afghanistan, or about Iraq War. There was equality was a good portion of that, but up until my life really melded with his was in 2005 when he ran for mayor. I fell in love with him right then and there, like just absolutely. I was in awe of his power, of his exuberance, of obviously his writing, but he changed so much around here and improved so much in this town. It's still not a city. It's almost a city. It's still a town. Hence, Happy Town.
City, one day.
We want to be. We want to be. So, one thing I do want to say, we've been thinking about everybody. We definitely want to give love to Tony, as much love as we can and respect. But Stephanie too, who is not here with us right now, but Stephanie Corte was probably, if you look up besties in the dictionary, that's them. And God, I love her, and I hope she's okay tonight too. But like a lot of other people have said what I wanted to say, which is that please carry his torch. Please take his mission as your own. A lot of the reporting I have seen, he's the gay this or that he was absolutely about the LGBTQ community, but he was so much bigger and brighter than that too. He isn't just that, to me at least, and I'm sure maybe to many of you, but there are so many causes that he fought for and so many that I joined with him on that I am never giving up on. And now I feel even more empowered to carry on, because my God, that boundless energy, I would trade myself for anything.
It's here.
It is. You're right. It is here. And so I thank you all for being here, and I love you all. And I'm.
Love you, Ducky.
All that said, I gotta put an emphasis on this. Everybody has a life, everybody's busy, but we're gonna have to find some time to be involved in all the things that Billy wrote about, because it winds up being the same people all the time. And if we all put just one drop in the bucket, we'd have a flood. And it's going to take everyone stepping up. I've done it for so long, as many of you have done for so long, and my health isn't what it used to be. And most of you are younger than I am. So basically, and in this atmosphere that we're in, we got to step up and get involved and get our hands dirty. and I can't put too fine a point on that. I think you understand what I'm driving at. All hands on deck. So, thanks to you.
Love you, Billy.
I can say something. Hi, I'm Ida. I met Billy through social justice work. And I too was obsessed over the Orange County Commission blogging. I would often be in those meetings, yet I would still read his blog because the world through Billy Maines' view is a lot better. And he really says what you're thinking and what you're feeling. His snark and his wit is something like, you know, you just strive for. I mean, it's incredible. And he just brought so much joy and love to the space he was in. And I've been, you know, these past couple days just compulsively on his Facebook, right? Just like trying to get the latest and just seeing what's going on. You know, some of my closest friends were there with him, but you know, you don't want to bother them, right? So you're just on Facebook looking for updates, and through that I've just been reading nonstop for the past, you know, 2 or so days, just all the incredible stories of lives he's touched in so many different ways. And my biggest takeaway from that, you know, absolutely social justice work, and that's my soul. And I think for the folks here, if you're not in social justice work, there's someone right next to you that can help you, right? But I think the other piece is that he treated everybody like they were just the most important person in the world in that moment. And I think for me personally, that's something that I want to make sure I do, is just show that love in every single interaction. Don't take that moment for granted, and just you know, love unconditionally and be unapologetic. That to me was Billy Maines, and he'll always be that. And so that's what I'll say.
If anyone wants it, or I should pass it a certain direction.